Hi, I'm Jimmy Flores from jimmyflores.es, and I want to help you change the world with your content. Right now, what we're going to see is the setup that I have to record video Skype interviews, and then we'll also see what the post-production is like until you upload that to YouTube to build your audience. Step one is to have really good light, and by good light, we mean a lot of light coming towards you. Basically, we need a lot of light coming towards us because we want to be illuminated. Now, in this case, we have these low consumption light bulbs that do the trick more than well. If you have the possibility, you might want to get something like this with a diffusion panel in the front, just so the light is more diffuse and less harsh on your face. And also, I recommend these light bulbs because if you do Skype interviews for a long time, like a long duration type of content, these lights, if they're not these light bulbs, will fry your face. You will be getting really, really hot, and you'll start more than likely sweating, which looks terrible on camera. Now, low consumption light bulbs, a diffusion panel. If you don't have the budget for this, don't worry, because you can get something like this, which are desk lamps that clamp onto the edge of the table. You point these suckers at you and you're ready to roll. If you don't even have budget for that, well, you can set up your computer in front of a window that gets a lot of light. The problem with this is that your recordings are going to be dependent on, one, the time of day the most light comes in through that window, and two, if you record for a long time, your lighting conditions are more than likely going to change on video, and that looks strange. So ideally, you want to invest just a little bit in some lighting that will allow you to record at any time of the day and give you the same lighting conditions. Okay, now let's have a look around at the rest of the stuff that we're going to need to record our Skype interviews. One of the most important things in recording video Skype interviews is the sound quality, because the better the sound quality, the more of an enjoyable experience it will be for the user and the audience to listen in and actually want to stay for the duration of the interview. So what I use is the following. I use a Shure PG48 condenser microphone that's directional. The most important thing about this is the directional part, because directional means it will only pick up the sound coming towards it immediately from the front. So everything that surrounds it, any sound that might come in, for example, echo, will not be picked up. Unless it's directly in front, it's not going to pick it up. Now, this is very important for what I just mentioned. If we're in a room, which normally is the situation that has echo, it won't pick it up. Other microphones that are omnidirectional pick up sound from all over the place, and we don't want that. So I use a condenser microphone that's directional. Now, this microphone is connected via XLR, which is a type of audio input, to the audio interface that I use to basically, what this interface does is, this is another audio recorder, which is a Zoom H4n, but basically the only thing that I'm using this for is as a bridge to pick up the sound from the mic and put it into the computer. This is not necessary, okay? But because I use the XLR input, I need a way for XLR to be converted into USB, basically, so just so we get the gist of things, and that's why I use the H4n. An alternative would be to use a microphone that directly connects via USB to the computer. And one of the best companies that produces these microphones is Blue. And Blue has a series of microphones called the Yeti. And this is the Yeti Pro, and this is the regular Yeti. And the Yeti Pro has two connection options. One is XLR and the other is USB. And the Yeti only has USB. Now, these microphones are great. And one thing that's very cool about them is that they have multi pickup patterns. So you can, I think you can set this to directional or omnidirectional or even other pickup patterns. So these microphones allow you to change the pickup pattern, but overall, the quality is amazing quality. So these are highly recommended. Now, I use my setup because I also podcast, and I use the equipment in also podcasting, and I'll make another video about that later. So that's pretty much the deal with audio. You need to control it as much as possible so it's an enjoyable experience for the audience. Now let's check out the computer end of things. Let's see, I use a Mac. That does not mean you need to use a Mac. This just means that the software side of this tutorial will be completely different for you. But as far as the hardware side goes, when you're recording video Skype interviews, it's very intensive on your system. So ideally, the only thing you want to have open at that moment is going to be the software directly related to the Skype interview. Turn off everything else because you will be consuming bandwidth on one end and computer resources to record everything, record the audio and record the video on the other end. So ideally, you would want to have a relatively powerful system because it will suck up resources. So I'm not anti-PC, anti-Windows or anything. It's just this is what I use and this is what we're going to look into. With video Skype interviews, here's something that's pretty frequently overlooked. The point of view that you should be looking at the camera on your computer, because normally what you're going to use is the webcam on your computer. You can have an external video camera, but generally it's not that needed. No, right now webcams are in general good enough to give us a quality that's decent for Skype video interviews. So one thing is eyesight level, and your eyesight needs to be directly aligned with the height of the webcam on your computer. So what I use in order to just lift the laptop a little bit further up so I'm looking directly into the lens is a cardboard box. So I have the laptop on top of a cardboard box just so the webcam is a little higher and I'm looking at it, because what we don't want to do is look down at the webcam because that perspective is a little menacing, and we also don't want to be looking up at it because that's just strange. We want to be at eyesight with the webcam. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the hardware end of things. This is what we're looking at: our mic, our audio interface, our lighting at 45-degree angles from us, so it's not directly glaring into our eyes. And here we are, we have our setup. Now let's look at the software end of things. Now, I assume that you already have Skype installed and you have your own account, etc., etc. So for us to be able to record our video Skype interviews, we're going to need to be able to record the audio and the video on our end and the audio and the video on the end of the interviewee. So what we need is a little piece of software called Call Recorder for Skype from a company called Ecamm. And this little bit of software is worth way more than it actually costs, and it's only $19.95 to purchase, and it's amazing. Now what they do is they sell you download the software but also a little pack of apps that we'll check out right now. These little apps are really useful because we are able to automatically change the original file format into different file formats just by dragging and dropping it onto these little application icons. But the most important part of this are these two little applications, which allow us to split the sides of the conversations that we record from Skype. So basically what we can do is let's say we have a file, and what we want to do is take this conversation that we've recorded and split it into two parts. I want to be able to edit my part and edit the interviewee's part separately. Why do we want to do that? Because sometimes the audio or the video on the interviewee's end, we can tweak it just a little bit and improve it. And if we're able to do that by not touching our end of things, because ideally we would have had nice lighting and great audio, well, it makes it a lot easier to tweak the interviewee's end without touching our end. So this is what we can do with this. This little icon, split movie tracks, basically splits all the tracks of our movies. So we get two different video files with two different audio files, one per side of conversation. So now let's check out this little one right here, split movie tracks. We open it and we can take a video file that we'll see this later. So this is basically the file that we'll get from Skype after we record, and we drag and drop right here. And what this will do is it's going to split all the tracks of our file. Basically, we'll get on one end the video from each side separately, and then the audio from each side separately. So we'll end up with 4 files, and that way we'll be able to tweak audio on individually and video individually. And here we go. Here's one video file, and another video file, and the audio files. Everything separate, ready to be put into our video editing program to tweak and edit. Now let's look at the other part of this, which is split sides of conversation, which this to me is probably more useful, because normally the only thing that I want is just 2 files, the audio and the video on one end and the audio and the video on the other end, because in general I don't need to tweak much more than that. So when I drop the original file into this, I get 2 files at the end, which they are the audio and video from each side of the conversation separately. Now, this is what these little apps do. Let's go check out the Skype end of things. After we've installed Call Recorder from Ecamm, we need to set up some preferences in Skype. So we get to that by clicking on Skype, Preferences, and Recording. We have this little neat recording button that gets installed as well. And here there's a bunch of stuff. Now, the how-to manual that comes with this little app is great. So if you check that out, you'll get a lot of detail into all these preferences. Basically, I'm just going to show you what I use to record, and that is audio encoding into AAC compression, audio quality as high, video encoding H.264, video image file size. I put it at 640 by 480 because that gives me 2 large files at the end, one for each person. Video frame rate maximum. And this is probably the kicker, the most important part, recording options. Record video, multi-track, because if you don't record in this option, you will not be able to split the sides of the conversation. Okay, I think it's more simple than that, impossible. So multi-track advanced, show recording indicator on video. I highly recommend this because one of the things that you'll find yourself is sometimes you might forget to press record, and that's a nightmare. So always get into the habit of saying, okay, I'm recording, and then you start recording. And once you click your record, which we'll see later on, you'll see that little button highlight. Show recording controls at launch. I have this clicked on because I record a lot, so I always, as soon as Skype opens, this little panel opens up immediately as well. Keep recording controls in front during calls. I recommend this as well because we don't want to forget that we're recording. Record calls automatically off, obviously, because not everything you're recording. And record voicemail playback automatically. Honestly, I don't know why that's clicked on, but it is, so whatever. And here you can set up where you want your calls to be saved. And after that, we're ready to roll and we're ready to start recording. Great. Now everything is installed and running, and we have our first interviewee here. We're going to interview Pumpkin Man, and Pumpkin Man is going to tell us all about his pumpkin tales. So what we do is we ring up Pumpkin Man, and now we hit record because everything is in order, and we start recording. We see our audio levels here. Pumpkin Man talks to us, so on and so forth. We finish our conversation and we hit stop recording. A couple tips. One is every single time that before I begin to interview, I always say, okay, I'm interviewing and I'm recording. After I hit record, and then when I'm done, I let the interviewee know that I'm finished recording. This way, I have always a cue that tells me, okay, I'm recording, just to avoid that getting to the end of a great conversation and saying, oh my God, none of that was recorded. So just a little tip. Now, once we've finished recording, we go look for our file. So here's my file. And the neat thing is that Call Recorder, every time that it finishes a recording a conversation, the name of the file will be the name of the contact that you were speaking to. So that's pretty neat. It helps identify which files belong to which contacts and conversations. So now, what do we have to do? Well, we have our file here, and now we want to split the sides of the conversation ASAP. That's the first thing that I do. So here's our little app. And what we're going to do now is drag, drop, and see our split sides of the conversation appear. So here are our files. There we go. My side, Pumpkin Man's side. Now, what we have to do is take these two files and we're going to see our next little bit of software that we're going to need to use, which is ScreenFlow. The video editing that I do for the video interviews over Skype is quite simple, and there's an application that I like to use that's called ScreenFlow, and ScreenFlow is made by Telestream, and this is a screen capture application, which basically means that it records what's on the screen, and it can also record through your webcam and audio coming in from different inputs. So it's a pretty neat little application that has a lot of power actually, and this application costs $78.15, but just like Call Recorder, it's worth much more than it actually costs. So I use ScreenFlow, and what we're going to do is edit within ScreenFlow. So the editing process is like this. I have my two files here that I'm going to put side by side. So we go into ScreenFlow and we want to create a new empty document. Now here we have a new empty document, and the first thing I want to do is resize it. So we go down here and we can change the canvas size. 1280 by 720 is still HD, but it's going to be a slightly smaller file size to deal with at the end. And apply. Now here's my canvas, and if you hover over the little timeline bar and you drag up, you can make your working area a little bigger. So now we have our canvas resized, we have our document, we go back to our files and we select them, we drag and drop them into our document, and they're right here. I'm going to drag and drop all the way to the beginning. Now I'm going to select my side of the conversation. I'm going to move it over to the left. I'm going to select Pumpkin Man's side. I'm going to put it over to the right. There we go. Now we have conversations side by side. Here they are. This slider down here allows me to see more or less of the timeline. Now I made it a little bigger. So here's the video, and let's say that I wanted to correct, because I wanted to color correct a little bit of the Pumpkin Man side of the conversation. Let's say it was too dark or too light. There's a problem. So what we can do is select this, go over to our little video action palette here, and we can change the saturation, go up or down. We can change the saturation, we can change the brightness, and we can change the contrast. We can make it more contrasty, less contrasty. So More than anything, what the editing that I do to the videos is just what we saw there. On the interviewee side, I tend to adjust the lighting conditions more than the audio conditions, because the audio, if it's terrible, you're not going to be able to fix it much more than that. So this is in general what I do as far as editing the videos themselves. Another thing that we can do, because normally you'd want to put a logo or something, is you can add a text box, for example, which is on this palette over here. You click the text box, add text box, and now you have a text box. So ScreenFlow has a lot of editing options, and we're not going to go through all of those here, but this is in general what I do to the conversations. So I add text boxes, so on and so forth. And when I'm happy with everything, well, we want to export this. So we go up to File, Export, and there's a ton of options, but we're going to keep it simple here. So we go Web, Hi. We change the name of our file. And we really want to pay attention to the scaling. We want to maintain it at 100%, because if not, then the dimensions of our video are going to be altered, and we don't want that. We want to keep it a nice HD video. And then we check where we want this file to end up. We want it back in our Pumpkin Man folder, and we're going to export. Now that we're done exporting, we go into our Pumpkin Man folder, and here is our final little file with both of these side by side. Here's a tip. If you plan on interviewing a lot over Skype, I suggest that you make yourself a ScreenFlow template so that you have something pre-made to immediately after you finish recording, drag and drop your files into, and that'll speed up the whole production process. So for example, we can have a template that looks something like this, to where we already have under our side and under our guest side some text boxes, and including even some images for this all just speeds up the whole process, so you don't have to do this all the time. If you plan on interviewing a lot, this is something that will save you a ton of time. And one of the most important things is making your content as easy to produce as possible, so that you actually create it. You know, I love to see production value. I love to see things with high production value, but sometimes we just need to pump out content, and having these little things all in order help us to produce more content more efficiently and faster. So now we have our video edited, and we're ready to upload to YouTube or Vimeo or whichever video platform you decide to use to distribute your content. So there you have it. You've seen the equipment, you've seen the post-production process. Now the only thing that's left is for you to go and make some amazing video Skype interviews. When you do, contact me. Go to my website, jimmyflores.es, and get in touch with me and let me know and show me what you've done, because your content can change the world. So go and build it.